Michael, we've been tracking this right through the year, both the fact that the two-party preferred number has been stuck a little, and we keep asking the question each time you bob up, has the concrete set? The Prime Minister's hitting the campaign trail, we're told, on his return, so I think there's some urgency coming into his assessment of reality now. What do you feel are the government's prospects for re-election now? Because I think we've seen a deterioration, I think, in his standing with the so-called base. We've tracked that as well, and I'm starting to get a sense the concrete is setting.
Well, Labor are in front of the polls, there's absolutely no doubt about that. And as I always said, a fourth term is hard to win. Progressively, every term is harder to win. The biggest challenge he's got is 58.5% of the vote we got last time in Queensland and 55.5% of the 2PP vote in Western Australia. National average 51.5%. So we outperformed in Queensland by almost 7% and 4% in WA. So he has to maintain his strength there. Now, in the light of very recent events overseas and the decision in relation to the new targets by 2050, the base vote of the party will be weakening in those two states, which are the critical states. And what he has to do is to reassure those people that life will be better long-term, short-term, medium and long-term under a coalition government than under a Labor government. That's his immediate challenge, and I do agree with the view that given what we've seen in America and underlying issues of concern to people, that cultural issues are going to start to play a bit of a role in this election. Attitudes to China would be one of those. Attitudes to nuclear may be another. Attitudes to the school curriculum another. So there are a number of these issues with which people have a deep affinity, as they had a deep affinity with tax at the last election. Labor's problem, of course, is they rarely win elections and they basically win by default. And after 3 terms, that's what they're trying for this time with a night watchman approach to policy. Can't see, can't hear.
And that small target approach does get flushed out during the campaign. But you've nominated a number of cultural issues, and I agree with you on all of them. And I would add also that I think the freedom of religion for faith-based communities, especially in some of Labor's heartland, are quite strong, polarising issues. And of all people, one would have thought this Prime Minister would choose that hill to pitch his tent. But he just does not seem to follow through and attribute significance to the culture wars. And to quote, paraphrase Trotsky, you may not be interested in war or the culture wars, but the culture wars are interested in you. Do you think he's going to take a lesson out of Virginia this week and maybe start to fight on national curricula and faith-based issues?
I certainly hope he doesn't meet Leon's fate, by the way. But, anyway, look, I hope so, because when you talk about economic management as our number one core brand equity has been ever since Menzies, the campaign of jobs and growth, which is basically what the Liberal Party's mantra, we tried that in 2016, albeit under a different leader who performed incredibly badly and who's got worse since, but it's not personal enough. The concept of a job is not personal enough, given the fact that 95% of people who have got a job already. They're looking for something else. And so the nature of cultural politics, if anyone was interested in that, it should be Scott. And, I saw John Roscombe last night with Bolton. I couldn't agree more with Roscombe. I think he's absolutely right, as the IPA have been for years on these issues. We just see what's happened in America, and the whole notion of parents being excluded from curriculum and being excluded from what's going on in schools, that was the subliminal message, goes down very badly with parents. So absolutely. I think if Scott works on those issues, and of course, as I said, he has to concentrate on economics and economic policy. The question is, how do you get something very specific, personally and finite, that affects individuals in the same way that Shorten's tax increases affected people at the last election? People could quantify what his tax changes meant to them personally, their families and their kids. The notion of we're better on jobs and growth is too impersonal, I think, to win a fourth term.
I think that makes sense, and I think reading between the lines on your analysis, we're looking at later, are we not? Perhaps May get another budget down range before he goes to the polls?
Yeah, I doubt another budget, but I tend to think it's going to be March, April. I certainly don't think it's going to be this year for no other reason.
No.
He's 6% behind the polls. But Menzies always used to, say it was good to have a December election because the public are in a good mood come December. But I can't see it on this occasion at all.